Hello, my name is Parthivi Das, Director of C2HR, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the latest installment of our HR Learning Series. C2HR is able to provide free, quality educational programs for our members like today's learning series thanks to the generous support of our 2024 sponsors, including Deloitte. We sincerely appreciate you. Today's topic is focused on how organizations are leveraging skills-based practices to achieve a wide range of goals, from unlocking organizational agility, tapping into the hidden skills of the workforce, promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in hiring, and driving upskilling and reskilling. Today's speakers will help us dive into how to build skills foundation for decision-making and share a case study of an organization that is on the journey and the steps that they have taken. We would like today's chat webinar to be interactive and invite you to post questions and comments in the Q&A box throughout the discussion. SHRM has approved this webinar for 1 CE credit, and the credit code will be emailed to all of you after the event. Today's featured Deloitte speakers are Sana Manzo, Managing Director, and Lucas Watanabe, Managing Director, Human Capital. Sana and Lucas, we can't thank you enough for sharing your insight with us. I will turn it over to the both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To the C2HR community, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be catching the recording, or for those of you on the call, thank you for joining us. It is our pleasure to be able to spend time with you speaking about what we're seeing in the market and what we're seeing in the industry regarding how organizations are starting to captivate and use skills and talent intelligence to fuel some of their business decisions as it relates to talent in HR. We had the pleasure of actually speaking and running a panel at the C2HR conference a couple of months ago. So for those of you that were there, thank you so much for being there with your questions and your captive audience. We wanted to actually give you a deeper dive into what this is. I'll give you a quick introduction of myself, and then I'd love my fellow partner Sana to introduce herself. Lucas Watanabe, as Parthivi mentioned, I'm a managing director at Human Capital. I help lead our U.S. organization around skills and all about advising clients on how they're thinking about skills in their skills journey. That's my background. Love for my partner Sana to introduce herself, and then we'll jump into it.
Thanks, Lucas. So Sana Manzo, like Lucas, I'm a partner here in our human capital practice, and I've spent much of my career both walking in some of the shoes that you wear as an HR leader and a talent acquisition leader, and as a consultant. And I'm very passionate about the way we can help unlock opportunities for individuals to really maximize their skills and find the right opportunities for them, whether that's through a talent acquisition journey or helping enable the employees in our organizations. So we're excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you so much, Sana. So with that, what are we going to spend time on? So we have about 60 minutes here. What we really wanted to do was, for those of you that are maybe newer on the skills journey, I want to give you actually a glimmer of what is the business case for skills. Why are organizations starting to use skills as a way to unlock talent potential? I then want to spend some time giving you an overview or a primer on what organizations are doing to build skills into their HR foundation. Things like, what are they doing with their skills taxonomies? What are they doing with skills technology? What are they doing with skills governance? And then how are they then integrating skills across the talent lifecycle? So one, it creates a more of a compelling and integrated employee experience, but even more pronounced, it helps solve some of the major talent challenges that your organizations are facing. At that point, we do want to give you a significant glimpse of what and how organizations are doing it through a deep dive. So Sana will actually walk through and spend a good amount of time on this call talking about how organizations are using technology and data through the rise of talent intelligence platforms to get more visibility into skill supply and demand to then fuel tangible and business data-driven outcomes for your workforce. So that's the case, and that's how we'll handle today. For those of you that may have questions, please do put them in the Q&A. More than happy to spend time throughout the presentation answering them. And then, of course, we will reserve time at the end of the call if there are any lingering questions there. With that, let's jump into it. So as organizations start thinking about their future, whether it's thinking about the future of business and the future of their workforce, many organizations are starting to think about how they can create better connection between their business needs through talent needs and skill needs, as well as what supply and skills they might have in the external marketplace, as well as what they might have in their organizations. So for the C2HR community, as you're starting to think about your organizations, you're able to start using skills as a way to fuel a lot of more detailed and tangible business and talent decisions, such as looking beyond a person just based off of the jobs they hold. You're able to start thinking about what data might we actually want about our workforce? What data might we want about the business and skill capabilities needed in our workforce? And then how do we actually attract the right talent and create talent mobility opportunities based on the skills that people have, the passions that people have, and the opportunities that they're seeking? Even more so from as the businesses shift and as your business models shift, you're able to start thinking about how can I more agilely deploy my workforce, whether we're talking frontline workers or corporate workers, it doesn't matter. You're able to start seeing where might there be agile teaming, agile skill deployment, agile upskilling, so that people have the skills and abilities that you're looking for to empower your future. That's the premise. We see a lot of organizations starting to think about this as a core to who they are. In fact, Deloitte did some research a few years ago, and we would refresh it every year around why are organizations making the shift and how does this actually look and show up for them. So I do want to give you a glimpse of what does it actually mean to shift to becoming a skills-based organization. Shifting to a skills-based organization is all about complementing your traditional talent practices with more visibility into skills and the skill needs of your workforce. So I'll kind of paint the picture. For example, for those organizations that do workforce planning, in the past, workforce planning might have heavily been focused on workforce planning based off of pure job vacancies, filling numbers. Now, organizations are starting to become smarter. They're saying, instead of just filling a number, I actually know what skill and capability I need in my workforce. And because of that, that's what I'm going to target when I do my workforce planning. That also then parlays into how they're thinking about skills-based hiring. So in the past, where an organization may have relied on hiring purely based off of experience and education, now you're able to get more tangible insights into the skills that somebody has as a candidate, match them to the skill needs of the organization to create better talent acquisition processes and talent acquisition results. For those people that already are within your network or that are employees, there's always a desire to continually upskill them. In the past, though, oftentimes learning and development was purely based off of jobs, i.e. compliance training. And now organizations are really seeing there's a much greater value proposition to the employees to actually give them opportunities to upskill in areas that they're interested in, but even more so, actually prescribe or recommend learning based off of what skills they have and what skills they may need for the work they're doing. For those organizations that are thinking
Lucas, it seems like we might have lost your audio.
all right. Sana, am I there?
Now you're back.
I apologize about that. Thank you for the cue, Sana. So continuing on, when it comes to skills-based work deployment, in the past, people would look at careers as, hey, who do I know? What's the career opportunities that are right in front of me? And now organizations are getting smarter about using AI to match people's career opportunities with project opportunities or work opportunities in their network. That then unlocks greater career interests, leverages their potential, all for the sense of how can they create bigger and better value to the organization. Skills-based rewards comes in, including how can I incentivize or reward the application of skills rather than just the job somebody has. So this is the premise. One of the things that we often get asked about, though, is if this is the premise, what should we as an organization really do? So one of the things that Sana and I will always advise is to be very clear about the skills can help unlock. So for the purpose of this call, we want to just do a quick poll. So I'm going to actually launch a poll here. And the polling question is simply, as you start thinking about your organization, what might be driving your interest in pursuing a skills-based approach? This is a select all that apply question. So whatever kind of as you think about your organization, whatever makes sense, please let us know. All right. I'll give you a couple more moments. And then we have a fairly small group here, which is perfectly fine. For those of you that are catching the recording, give it some thought, as you're reflecting on your organization, what would be driving your interest in skills-based approach? So I'm going to end the poll here. What's interesting is some of the responses around need for new skills, desire for better organizational agility. That is front and center for a lot of companies as you're starting to think about the shifts in your industry, certainly. The need for continuous upskilling in the content and connectivity space, the need for continuous organizational agility because of org changes that might be happening. All of that makes sense, right? Like these are the things that organizations are thinking about. One of the cool things is that skills does help you unlock some of the opportunities here. I'll always say it's not a replacement for jobs, it's a complement for jobs. So if that's the premise, what I do want to do now is kind of give you an idea of where are organizations starting. Many organizations will actually start by thinking about building the foundations to let skills run. Skills play through talent processes and actually skills impact your business as a whole. They start by thinking about what is my entire philosophy around skills and how do I actually think about it as a complement to work and jobs, and how do I think about skills being a connective thread across all of the talent processes from workforce planning to talent acquisition to learning and development, internal talent marketplace, ... Additionally, from that, organizations are starting to think about what is my skills framework and how am I thinking about the identification of the most critical skills for my workforce, given the work that I as an organization are prioritizing, and how does that then tie into the existing job architectures that we might already have in place? Certainly a big thing that organizations are starting to think about is what do I do for skills tech and data? There's a tremendous emergence in the market around vendors and technologies that bring greater visibility to skills. And Sana, as part of our deep dive, will actually kind of give you a view of what that looks like. But there's a tremendous sense around using skills data and matching skills supply and demand data to fuel a lot of the integration points on the right. For those organizations that might be a bit farther in your skills journey, including starting to develop skills taxonomies and actually run skills pilots, starting to think about skills-based, workforce planning or skills-based talent acquisition. There's also always a question around how do you govern this? How do you manage it? How do you create the right messaging for it? Because skills is not something that's going to be static, right? The evergreen nature, the continuously evolving nature of skills is the most compelling proposition. But it's also something and a reason why organizations actually will give it thought around how do we govern this and stay ahead of skills so that it doesn't become stale within our organization. From there, there's companies then say, if I have the infrastructure and the foundation set on the left-hand side of the screen, I then want to actually pilot this or run this within a talent process to actually create value for the business and our people, such as I do want to try skills-based talent acquisition. I do want to feed learning and development recommendations through skills. And because of that, as you start thinking about it, there are tangible value and tangible benefits that come from this. In fact, through our research, we find that organizations that do something with skills are absolutely more likely to retain high performers. In fact, 98% more likely, 79% more likely to create a positive workforce experience, which we know is tremendously paramount in our industry. And then 52% more likely to innovate. Hey, if I were a business leader and somebody were to say I could be 52% more likely to innovate by actually looking at skills rather than jobs, this, to me, that's a no-brainer. It is something that is compelling. And we have a lot of companies that are saying they are trying something within skills, some talent and integration point, and they are seeing profound successes. The key word is trying, right? So Sana and I will never say, do everything all at once. In fact, that is the number one lesson learned. Don't try and apply skills to every single talent process because it will likely fold on itself. More so, the change management journey will have to be given discrete thought. Rather, try something with a particular critical workforce segment. So if you think about your workforce, if there's a particular skill area or particular area workforce segment that you're trying to create better talent acquisition processes or better learning and development results, try skills in it. It will unlock a wider talent pool and create a better value proposition to the business. So with that, if that's building the foundation, the next question that we actually often get is, so what does it really look like? So what we want to do is we actually want to give you a glimpse of what might this look like in practicality. To build a skills foundation, there's certainly we see organizations and companies talk about, how do I actually create alignment around what is my biggest talent challenge that I'm trying to solve? How can actually skills help? So for example, being very clear, do you have a talent shortage problem because of the ever-evolving nature of the hiring workforce? Is there a critical skill gap because of a new product or service you're looking at? Being very clear on what is the business case of adopting skills, and then actually prioritizing a particular use case or a particular area of talent, such as skills-based learning, skills-based TA. When it comes to skills, frameworks, and common language, tactically, organizations are thinking about how do they create more consistent and aligned skills frameworks toward their job architecture. How do they create internal, common language around skills? So what is the skill versus the competency versus the capability? What's their skills framework and a mapping approach? So what are the most critical skills that I want everybody in the organization to have? What are the functional and domain specific skills? What are the job specific skills? And then what and how do I build a skills taxonomy, including things like how many proficiency levels do I want? How do I describe it? And then how do I feed that then into skills data and technologies, such as feeding information or using AI to create better insights into market demand, skills data around skills supply, skills data about your workforce, and then certainly the user experience that allows it to happen. I mentioned governance. Organizations certainly do think about who owns skills, how do I govern it, how do I keep it continually fresh. As a mindset shift for organizations, what's the difference between how we talk about skills and work and jobs? For those HRBPs or recruiters or whatever it may be that have heavily relied on jobs as a core, how can they start thinking about skills as a complement to the way they work or the way they think about the talent pool? And certainly, how am I reporting impact for this? What's the value proposition, not just on a KPI side to the business, but how am I actually framing this up as a benefit to people and my workforce, because they're the ones that are going to feel and benefit from it. So like, what's the net value to them as people? That's just a view of what we're seeing companies tactically do to start building their skills foundation. The other thing is how they're talking about where they're prioritizing work. As they start thinking about which use case they want to prioritize skills to, a common one are things that are more employee-facing, things like learning and development, so personalized learning paths, personalized development opportunities based off of skill gaps. Then talking about the benefit to the talent pools based off of using skills to feed talent acquisition, mobility, and careers. That's usually where we see companies start, because one, it's highly visible and highly beneficial to the employee base, and it not only benefits the business, but also your employee value proposition. Then as organizations start thinking about other talent strategies, they start looking at workforce planning, skills as a part of the performance management process, skills as a part of leadership and succession planning, all in the sense of what is the journey that they're on. Once again, I'll mention big lesson learned. Do not try and apply skills to all of these talent processes. Pick the ones that are most prevalent or the most pressing given the talent challenge that your organization is facing. All right. So with that, I've said a lot. I've actually done a lot of priming around what skills organizations are. I'm going to present one more slide and then I'll hand it over to my partner Sana to give you a deep dive into it. The last slide is we always want to try and make this tangible to you. So we want to actually kind of give you a picture of how might this actually flow through as an integrated process. So if an organization were thinking about skills-based approaches, this might show up in a way of skills-based sourcing, where you're now able to match and map skills to the particular roles that your recruiters are actually looking for, then helping recruiters understand how do they look at talent pools based off of skills rather than just jobs or job requirements. Then they're able to think about, might our job descriptions be written to also include skills as a part of it? Might our interview guides actually be also inclusive of skills as a way to kind of diagnose skill fit? There's a focus on the sourcing side that it's more important to actually close skill gaps and job vacancies. As organizations then think about beyond just how do skills fit into our sourcing plan and now into how we're actually acquiring and hiring people, taking a skills first approach to hiring may include things like, yes, implementing new approaches to skill proficiency assessments or demonstration of skills as part of the hiring process so that people can actually see and assess, do people have the right capabilities needed to drive the work and execute the work going forward? Then as you're starting to think about skills fit, how does the candidate fit with the skill requirements so that once they are an employee, you're also then able to see based off of their own personal skills, skill level and skill proficiencies, what might be learning and development and career mobility opportunities that are personalized to them. So tagging skills to the learning catalog so that it automatically will recommend skills in the right areas, allowing them people to navigate whether it's an internal gig or internal talent marketplace to find opportunities where they can apply their unique skill sets, then get, as they're actually applying and learning, how do you get better and more tacit measurement into the skill gains that people have and skill gaps so that they then can feed that into performance discussions. Has Lucas, for example, progressed in his skill set year over year in a critical skill area because we know that is important to our business? What additional development opportunity might I personally need based off of what I come with and the work that I'm doing? And then how do I prescribe that as part of my development plan? And then for those organizations that are starting to think about, talent retention, there's a question around how are people actually applying their skills and then certainly rewarding people for the application and the impact their skills have on the work that they do. So kind of a flow through. Absolutely, you could see there is a natural red thread around how skills data can inform and flow through all of the talent processes. So I've said a lot. I'm just going to do a quick check to see if there's any questions in the Q&A. There is a question. So maybe Sana, maybe we'll park here for a question and then we'll go to your section. The question is, what are the best sources for market data on skills demand?
Wow,
So
it's such a. You want to start?
After you, Sana.
Yeah, so there are, there are a plethora of resources that have come into the market. And in this next session, we're going to be talking about the whole concept of talent intelligence and how do you effectively get your hands on both the supply and the demand side equation. So I think, from that standpoint, one of the things to consider is what is your current technology architecture like today? And are there options for you to think about having a streamlined approach where you might be able to get some of those talent insights that you're looking for through a platform? And we're going to talk about that concept in a minute. But there are also, of course, sources of data that you can use and ingest and subscribe to, and then work on your own organizational strategy in terms of how you integrate that into your existing technology architecture. And we Deloitte have our own solution that we use with our clients to help from an advisory perspective as well around that.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sana, and thank you for the question. We certainly appreciate it. So with that, why don't we actually jump into our deep dive? So,
okay, fantastic. Are we doing one more poll before we start, or we can jump right in?
I think we can just jump right in, actually.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. Well, thanks for, some of the input that was given and questions so far. Let's keep this collaborative. If you have questions, please, Lucas will be kind of keeping an eye on the chat, and we'll can answer those as we go. And we'll also save some time at the end. This is an area that I'm particularly passionate about, the ability to take technology and the innovation that we've been seeing, particularly around AI, to help transform and enable our organizations to really move the needle to becoming skills-based orgs. And I mentioned that I'd been in the space for a long time. And so I've probably seen, so many iterations of talent acquisition and talent management solutions in the market. And I have to say, when I first got introduced to this concept of talent intelligence a few years ago, I was fascinated. I really thought it was an inflection point in our industry. So we're going to share a little bit more about that. But before we jump in, I just want to conceptually, here's the framework that Lucas was just sharing. And what I've done here is that, of course, we're going to talk about the skills, data, and technology thread of this. But I'm pointing out here that some of these other areas in our other components of the framework are kind of intricately tied when you are looking to do a technology-enabled transformation. So things like a common language around skills and how do you set up your skills framework and do the mapping approach. That has, been somewhat of a laborious process in the past. What we're seeing and what we're finding in practice is by infusing technology and in not only the sources of data, but AI-driven capabilities, we're able to accelerate that process. And not only can we accelerate that process, but we can start to respond to what we know to be true, that the half-life of skills, is compressing as we go. So in the past, if you created a skills taxonomy, often, that was a point in time, and it would be quite an initiative to continue to keep that updated. Perhaps, it got outdated and there wasn't the effort to maintain it. So things fell out of alignment. So what we can see now is this need to be more agile and to be infusing information about the supply and demand of skills. What is happening? Are there new skills coming in the marketplace? How are these skills declining or rising? Is it influenced by industry and geography? And what might that mean to your organization? So hence, the ability to really infuse that into your approach, to be thinking about what sort of technology solutions do we need that can help us put this governance structure together and really start to capitalize on being future ready, right? It's important that we're looking at what we're doing today and meeting the needs of our business, but using the technology not only to accelerate that capability, but thinking about future ready is a really important consideration. And when we think about the impact of measurements and KPI, if we're thinking about that by putting the end in mind, again, another really important consideration when you're looking at and evaluating technology is thinking about what is it that we need to be measuring to make sure that as we're moving through this journey to become a skills-based org, we're transforming a function to have more skills-infused business capabilities, that we're thinking about how we're going to measure that. Look at what your benchmarks are today. Think about how we're transforming perhaps the role and capabilities of individuals as we move through this process. And how do we want to measure that to make sure that we are actually realizing the business benefits that we're looking to do at the from those outcomes. And so those are some of the key components. Also, I just think putting, the employee at the center, we're going to talk in detail about that. But what is that value proposition to the employee? So if we put that hat on when we're thinking through technology enablement and taking a human-centered design approach, it really helps us, again, kind of design for those outcomes that are most critical for us. Well, let's go ahead and move into this next slide. So we wanted to really provide some practical insights of how to move through this journey. And so I'm going to use talent acquisition, one of the areas that we see organizations move most rapidly into, and talk about, if you're taking on this initiative, what are some things to think about as you move into the transformation? I was mentioning that experience piece, right? So if we're thinking about it from a human-centered perspective, we really want to bring that design thinking approach into our process. So identifying the personas, what are those moments that really matter? And then how do we define the journey map? So we'll help bring all that to life. That then helps set the stage for when we're implementing technology to make sure we are going back to those guiding principles and aligning to what we want that end user experience to be like. Also very important, Lucas mentioned, governance and thinking through process implications. Stepping back and thinking about the processes that we have in TA. Are they serving us well? Are they based on leading practices, and do they have, if important to us, regional and global capabilities, right? And so one of the things we can do then is take that experience design and then move to the next step with a global process design. But you want to make sure that you're not doing that in a vacuum. And unlike, I would say, the days of yore, when we would go in a room and we would design, this is the best process without thinking about the technology, and then we go try to select the technology to match that. What works much better today, because there's so much innovation and so much capability out there that helps us drive towards these outcomes, is then take an informed approach, right? So get to know the technology ecosystem, understand what some of these capabilities are that will be really rewarding in terms of giving you these skills-based capabilities, and design in concert, right? So taking into account process and technology, infusing that. And I think, it's been really interesting to watch this process unfold, because it often is an aha moment when we start, really putting that hat on and we understand the technology, because indeed some roles may change quite significantly. And we have some organizations who had, built pretty significant sourcing functions, for example, in talent acquisition. And what they found when they started to look at the technology and the way AI skills matching could enable them, that they actually could transform the way their operating model worked and make recruiters and sourcers kind of combined into one talent advisor. So some great thoughts just in terms of thinking about it from the process perspective, the operating model perspective, the vision perspective, and then moving into our technology implementation with all of those as a foundation. So let's go on to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about the case study. So I have the great fortune to have been working with one of your industry peers with, if you might see the theme here, leading streamer. So Netflix has been, I've been working with them over the last 18 months on their talent acquisition, evolution and transformation, as well as their talent management journey. And really starting with the concept that as they have been growing out of a really agile startup environment and growing globally, now is time to really step back and think about, as we have these huge talent needs continuing and as we grow globally, how can we start to think about and adopt some of the skills-based strategies to propel us on an initiative that will allow us to better understand skills and talent and how we'll attract, hire, retain, grow, and develop those resources. And so this is a kind of a great example, as I was talking through this approach of doing human-centered design and the process informed by the technology. So Netflix had selected, they needed to move off kind of some technology that they had outgrown. So they went through a selection process and they selected to move on to the Eightfold Talent Intelligence Platform and Workday recruiting. So this new infused model. So what does it mean to say a talent intelligence platform? It's actually a concept that was coined just a few years ago. So within the last 4 years, it's exciting to see not only what's happened with AI and Gen AI, but this whole concept of a talent intelligence platform is a net new, capability within our industry. And I think it was an inflection point that really started to help organizations think about moving forward and actually being able to put into practice what we've been talking about for a long time in terms of a skills transformation. And so with that in mind, we kind of embarked upon this journey, the experience and the process design informed by their selection of technology, and charted the course to make sure that those components were completed before we started to move into the implementation phase. So we'll talk more about this case study. This was just the first phase, kind of the strategic phase of it, and the front end design piece. And want to switch gears just for a minute now as we go to our next piece. And go back to the concept of a red thread, because this was really important in our conversations as we were developing the strategy for this initiative. So I like to talk about this, putting the employee journey with skills at the center. And what do we mean by that? Really, it's, often we've thought a bit more in silos. So we think about, how are we trying to solve for attraction? Or how are we trying to solve for upskilling or reskilling or retention issues? When really the journey is a humanistic journey, right? That starts when we are interacting with people in the market. It goes through the talent acquisition process, and then it continues as individuals are working through their career with our organizations. So we use this construct to really try and bring to life some of these key concepts. And we're going to use eightfold here to kind of, and work to show the example that fits with our case study. So starting really just at the very beginning, one of the things that has been really insightful to see is the ability to start using true candidate relationship management. So in the past, there's been a lot of discussion about candidate relationship management. Some great tools have been on the market, in this evolution, but it was still difficult to really get the size and scale and identify, or what I will call rediscover, talent within that data set in a meaningful way. But once we start to see the infusion of AI and skills coming together, that ability to now really curate personalized journeys and outreach to individuals that match an organization's skill needs has been transformative. So in this example, we have an individual who actually was an alum. So they'd been with the organization some time ago, and through this process of talent rediscovery, recruiter identified and invited them to explore career opportunities. The individual was engaged with the content and quickly saw that there was something that new that they hadn't seen before in talent acquisition or in their career exploration. Rather than having to search for themselves through a lot of different job postings using filters or keywords and reading through lengthy job descriptions to try and identify, do I fit this position? They were actually given the opportunity to have that served up to them. So using AI and matching with the skills the organization was looking for and the content of either LinkedIn profile or resume, a candidate is then served up opportunities. And those opportunities now are curated just for them. And so it cuts through all that kind of chaff, if you will. And what we see is that it enables the candidate to, again, quickly get to content that's relevant. And it gives them what we call transparent AI insights. So not only being served up content, but why is this content relevant for you? So insights to, here are the skills and here's how you match. And that kind of transparency is pretty transformative. We see engagement going way up. We see the number of applications and completions going up for organizations. We see the diversity of the talent pool going up. One of the things that probably many of you have heard, the Harvard Business Review study about the way in which females and males engage with job opportunities. And what's been shown is that females tend to only apply if they meet 85, 95% of the criteria outlined in the job description, where male candidates will apply for much, much less. So you would often see, people would say, well, we just don't have the talent, we don't see these candidate pools. We don't see the diversity that we're looking for. Giving the candidate that transparency now, we've seen some organizations increase their female slates by up to 50%. So some really interesting things that come up along the way. The other thing you'll see on this, and we won't go through the entire journey map, it's but I'm going to hit some key highlights. You'll see some little indications here of Copilot. So this is some, capability, of course, as we all think about how Gen AI can help propel us further, is helping along that journey as well. And so Copilot in this case can help a candidate better prepare their resume to take advantage of getting that structured in a way that is best informed for positions that they're interested in. So if we think about moving through this journey, again, lots of components that we can enable from a technology perspective and AI. From the recruiter perspective, what's fascinating now is the opposite end of that candidate equation is recruiters can very quickly identify those people that best match their opportunities. So the time to screen goes down, You're getting slates to hiring managers much more quickly. Hiring managers can see why these individuals are a fit. So you're spending your time from a human at the wheel perspective in a much more efficient way. And then ultimately being able to drive campaigns that are targeted based on skills. So if you have new needs or you're looking for developing future-ready talent pools, those can be used very effectively to, again, anchor back to skills and develop these talent pools in a new way. And I think it gets back to what Lucas was saying. Sometimes it is more effective to be thinking about what skills do we need to close through that lens than just focusing on how many job openings we have. So some great tools that we can use there. The other thing that I would say is that when we're thinking about skills in this part of the talent acquisition journey, that we're able to start to then take that, build on that from I will say now that the assessment piece of that, right? So we're tailoring interviews to those things that we need to validate. The system can help us validate many things, right? And in fact, in this particular solution, it will say these skills have been validated, these skills need to be reviewed, and these skills that the candidate seems to think they have, we don't think that they haven't proven these skills. They might be in doubt, so some areas to probe. So it gives some more direction in terms of the way that we can arrange our approach. So ultimately, we find a great candidate or slate of candidates. We make offers. They come in. And what happens at this point? They're highly engaged. They're excited to come into our organization. And over time, we want to try and make sure that we're providing them the same insights, the same capabilities to interact and understand how they can add value. So just like in the recruiting process, how are they aligning their skills, their interest? How do we keep that momentum going? Because what we've heard oftentimes is it's a lot easier to get a job by leaving an organization than finding one in where they are. And so how can we help democratize that process? And how can we help put the employee at the center of that journey? And so moving into this concept of a career hub where an individual can say, here are the skills I came in with, here are the skills that match up to my job. I have interest in progressing or moving laterally. What do I need to get there? And being served up learning opportunities, mentors, maybe gig opportunities or projects to help them develop those skills, and ultimately helping them get better prepared for their ongoing career development. It also gives great opportunities for their leadership to be speaking with them about opportunities, or perhaps serving up opportunities directly to their team about learning journeys that are skills aligned. And onward, we continue to see growth and development. An individual then in this model, has aspired to make some big changes. They get the right experiences and training. They get served up a new opportunity. So it actually is nudging them that it's available. They apply. They are now very happy to be promoted in their career, and they continue to be an advocate for the organization. So that's kind of our skills at the center and how technology can help inform that. Let's go now and talk a little bit more. I think we're going to skip this one, as I've done a lot of those concepts here, and this has a build, Lucas. So I focused on talent acquisition. For Netflix, what was also very important, and that back half of that journey that we were just talking about, was the talent management components of that as well, right? And so wanting to make sure that they were providing a destination for individuals to understand what opportunities there were. And so that, as Lucas had explained earlier, was a unique opportunity to think about what might we want to pilot? What are some important segments of our organization that we think would be find great value in piloting this talent marketplace concept? So, pilot group was selected, use cases were aligned with business outcomes, and it became an ability not only to engage that part of the organization, but start to think about having that change journey supported by champions. So there were individuals who became very, again, enthused about this capability. They helped spread the word to other parts of the organization. And what Netflix has done is now they've offered that up to other leaders and other groups. So as they hear about the success of the program, they are coming and they're asking to get engaged. So that period is going on through the end of the year. And then in January, the whole organization will, get opportunities to now have that capability for it. So it's a nice way to think about it. Engage with an audience, get feedback, get champions, expand that, and then start to think about your rollout for your broader organization. We actually did somewhat similar, I wouldn't call it a pilot, but it was, I'll call it an early time to value initiative for talent acquisition. When you're implementing a new solution like a Workday plus talent intelligence platform, the time frame that tends to be a little bit longer, right? So, 7 to 9 months, depending on the size of the global organization, even a year, and whether that's integrated in with a broader HR tech implementation strategy. It's a long time to start getting value, right? So one of the things that we partnered with Netflix on was, let's get really creative and let's think about how could we get some of this capability, this AI-driven skills matching capability, in the hands of users. Where are the most critical challenges that are being faced today? And that happened to be in the sourcing category, right? So they had a team of what they call researchers who were very active in finding talent. But once that talent was in their current ATS, very difficult to do rediscovery on an ongoing basis. So we kind of quickly narrowed on these use cases, and the team that would participate in this early time to value, and we were able to stand that up in just 3 months. So, well in advance of the full global deployment, and again, started to get great internal feedback, started to get champions, and started to get insights into how we could continuously improve it on the journey to the global rollout. So I think those are some, kind of practical insights to share. If we put our hat on about the broader talent ecosystem, we've talked about talent acquisition, talent management. There's another big part of our talent ecosystem that is probably near and dear to a lot of your hearts in terms of the way you actually meet the talent needs of your organization. And that's what we'll call that contingent workforce population, right? The non-employee piece of that. And often they get left out of the equation. So the great news now is we're starting to see capabilities come to market where we can actually start to get insights about the skills of our entire talent ecosystem. And so we're thinking about a build, buy, borrow equation rather than just, our traditional silos of talent acquisition, talent management. And it allows our leadership and our talent managers and our hiring managers to really be thinking creatively. One of the great things that you can do from a data insights perspective with this is once the requisition is created, you never start from zero, right? So there's a process called calibration that the recruiter and the hiring manager partner on that say, here are the critical skills. And in fact, the system serves them up as, here are the suggested skills, and then they can tune them. And as they're tuning them, they can see what's the implication on the talent community that we already know about. People who've applied to us and our employees and perhaps our contingent workforce. And you can start to look at, do we have enough of a pool and where do we need to focus our efforts in terms of this next step in engaging with talent? So that's a really exciting evolution. And then, more recently, we're starting to see resource management. So in addition to the process of bringing talent into the organization, how can we start using skills-based insights and this talent intelligence platform to think about the way we deploy skills? So, do we have parts of our organization that are project-based? Certainly, when you think about the creatives in your industry, of course we do, right? So how do we take that concept and start infusing that in from an availability or booking of resources and use that skills-based platform to do so? There's some other things at the center of this talent intelligence platform that are really important when you think about the broader journey for becoming a skills-based org. And a lot of those just have to do with how can we think about developing our taxonomy or our skills catalogs, if you will. There are actually a lot of different ways that we can address that. Some organizations are choosing to spend time really developing in-depth taxonomies and ingesting them into the model. And others are saying, we want to run fast. And we can take the capabilities in the global jobs database or the global role environment that has been provided and use that to jumpstart our journey by infusing information about our employees and those people that we have hired or sourced. And it helps basically take information about your organization, infuse that to help the AI model learn what's important to you. So lots of interesting concepts in terms of the way that the data can be used. All right, so that's a little bit more about the platform. I thought this might be helpful because we've been, again, back to our recruiting, our talent acquisition journey. This just gives you a sense, if you are thinking in a traditional mindset of, maybe you're a Workday shop or an Oracle or SuccessFactors, and you have an applicant tracking system, that's been a good foundation, but it doesn't have all the comprehensive capabilities that organizations are seeking typically to answer a lot of these opportunities that we've been discussing. So this Better Together example basically says, value and optimize investments you've made and infuse these new capabilities of a talent intelligence platform together to make a solution that is going to now be quite different in terms of an outcome base. So you can see that here. I talked a little bit about the calibration process, but jobs are open and requisitions are posted in your system of applicant tracking. The engagement layer within this talent intelligence framework then gives end users, recruiters, hiring managers, talent leaders, the ability to use these new engaging features and leverage AI skills capabilities. And you can see some of the outcomes there. And then once the person is selected, then you can go back to the ATS for the traditional extending the offer, the onboarding, and things like that. I think what we're seeing is the next iteration is organizations like Gatefold who are saying, and for some organizations who are smaller in size, and maybe you're not on Workday, Oracle, SAP, or something else like that, and you want a encapsulated solution, so you do requisitions and offers that can be self-contained. So I think we're going to start to see some movement, but these aspects of, I would say, the central core of the capabilities is what's been really transformative. All right, so let's, I think we've talked about a fair number of these benefits, but I wanted to hit a few highlights here from an HR and leadership perspective. We're always going through disruption, whether that's, like a local issue or an organizational issue or a geopolitical issue. Disruption is a fact of our life, right? So how do we think about not only, again, serving those needs of what we need to do today, but if we have to be planning for something like a reorg or a downsizing, a RIF, or creating a new, we're going to spin off part of our organization, M&A activity, all those things, talent intelligence engines can help provide insights to start thinking about those and planning for those in new and I think better value-driven outcome ways. So definitely some thoughts there. Succession planning, again, kind of getting back to the democratization and away from it's not what you know, it's who you know, and moving towards a more equitable approach to connecting people with opportunities. Succession planning has often been done at top of house because it's been pretty labor intensive and difficult to orchestrate. With the new solutions that we're seeing on the market, we're seeing organizations actually being able to do kind of on-demand succession insights and planning throughout all levels of their organization. So something to think about. As we've said, it's orchestrating what's important to your organization and developing a roadmap, I think, is a critical thing. But know that there are solutions that are evolving all the time. And I know we're getting towards the top of the hour, so two more quick highlights. I did want to talk about skills adjacencies. I think it's such an important concept when we're looking at how do we upskill and reskill, or even how do we look at talent pools in the marketplace and think, do we need the traditional mindset that people have to have all of these skills? Or can we be thinking about the potential people have by understanding skills adjacencies? So this framework just kind of gives the observation that if we were strictly looking at risk management, for example, it's a much smaller pool. But when we start looking at adjacent skills, it expands that talent pool quite significantly. And I would say the areas that we see this most impactfully right now would be even in things like technology needs. So tech talent is a challenge, right? Finding enough tech talent across all organizations. So looking at those adjacencies, if you need a data scientist, maybe you don't need the type of skills necessarily that you've traditionally thought of, but those skills adjacencies could open up new opportunities. So great, insights there in terms of the data. And the last one I think we have is this concept of, if we have declining roles in our organization, again, organizations moving to be more agile or, product-based organizations, we have declining roles and we have future or evolving roles. How do we look at the high, is there a high degree of overlap in skills across these? Identifying opportunities like that and then charting the course for learning and development opportunities within our organization can help make sure we're looking at our own talent and finding ways to retain it first. So with that, I think the wrap-up slide was just to say, again, back to my some of my original messages, this mindset shift of the HR and working together with the business to identify the value drivers and kind of develop your roadmap for skills transformation. And then, always put that value proposition to the employees, kind of equivalency with those business outcomes, because what we found to be true in our research is that ultimately you can drive much greater human performance by thinking about both the business outcomes and the human outcomes. And we think skills and technology enablement will help you get there. So thanks for the time today.
Thank you, Sana. Really, I could tell there's a lot of questions and thoughts. We actually got 2 questions in the queue. So at this point, I mean, we got a couple of minutes left. Let's go through them. One of the questions is, as you were talking, somebody asked, hey, this feels very requisition or candidate focused. Is there consideration or alignment to internal job architectures when collecting capability or skills data? I'm more than happy to start, and then Sana, love for your thoughts. So absolutely, when an organization has a job architecture that's clean, a job architecture that's consistent, it certainly makes the process around identification of critical skills and alignment and mapping of those critical skills so much easier. So if you're thinking about, for example, how do I think about all skills that my organization needs? How do I think about the domain or function specific skills that, a job family or a job group might need? And then the specific technical or tacit skills that some person may have based off of the work that they're going to do. A clean job architecture will certainly help. My perspective, but Sana, additional thoughts on your side?
Yeah, and then I think it's the connectivity into what we call talent design capabilities within a talent intelligence platform, which basically take job architecture and start thinking about that skills connection that Lucas is talking about with that job architecture, and then using the talent insights and AI to continuously look at that, right, and tune it. So we've seen organizations who have cleaned up their job architecture, done the initial taxonomy and mapping, ingested that into a talent intelligence platform, and then been given AI insights to further tune it. So I would say, we're starting to see some evolution in that regard. And then from a data insights perspective, absolutely, like you want to be able to go into your organization kind of more holistically and look at, we know we need X skills, where do those skills reside, kind of regardless of the roles, et cetera. So you can take that slice from an analytics perspective as well.
Thanks, Sana. The second question I think that we have time for is, from a rewards perspective, is there a trend to focus less on performance management and more on skills-based recognition? So once again, I'll give my thoughts, and Sana, I love your additional thoughts. So from a rewards perspective, I still think that performance outcomes or the work outcomes or performance impact of somebody is the core to rewards. So people should be rewarded and based off of the impact that they're having against the work that they're doing. I do not see organizations rewarding people just because they're learning. To me, it's more about the application of the skills that they have against the work to actually drive better business outcomes, my perspective. Yeah.
I think the slice of it, if I think about it from the front end, is giving insights into high demand skills that are in high demand, and what are the implications of how those skills are being compensated for, which can help drive your strategy and tuning around your approach.
Yeah. Thank you. I know we're at time. It has been a pleasure speaking with you all. For those of you on the call, those of you that are catching the recording, I know there's probably a lot of questions that might come up, so please do connect with Sana and myself. We're on LinkedIn, reach out, send us an email. It's always great to support the C2HR community as well as just the industry as a whole. So thank you for that. And I do want to pass it back to our C2HR team for their thanks and their closeout.
Well, thank you so much, Sona and Lucas. We cannot thank you enough for sharing this information. It's thought-provoking, and like you said, it's where work is going. So thank you so much for sharing that. And for those of you on the call from the C2HR community, please see here that we have the continuing credit for SHRM. Thank you all for taking your time to be a part of the call, and we will send a follow-up email with the video because there was so much good information and content. It'll be on demand so that you can take a closer look and listen again to what they shared with us today. So thank you again, and thank you everyone at Deloitte for your support of C2HR. Hope everyone has a great day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.